This is a follow-up to my EDC pocket tool video where I suggested that in addition to my main pocket tool of choice over here, that it's useful to pocket carry pliers for needs that finger strength can't satisfy. And I didn't have time in that video to go into the various ways that I've experimented with carrying them. So I thought it would be helpful to review some of them here in a separate video. So first let's talk about why you may want to take precautions while carrying them. The obvious default is to just carry them bare like they are in a pocket along with the pocket tool, and particularly a tool that you're not worried about it damaging, and trusty Ranger here can take it. But these pliers have sharp edges that can wear on a pocket or catch and damage it. And it really has, I haven't had it happen yet, but perhaps it's because I never really carry them without some sort of covering. But it doesn't hurt to take some precautions, especially because of the second reason I prefer to cover them, and that is to protect whatever else may end up in that same pocket. These jaws are hardened steel and the edges are sharp, so anything softer than them is going to be at risk. So I have to stay conscious of not putting scratchable items into that pocket with them, which can be easy to forget, particularly if I'm shoving things in my pockets to get them out of the way while traveling or shooting pictures or dealing with other gadgets or equipment while on the move. And that's when a little bit of protection on the tool itself starts to make a lot more sense. I recommend that if you're going to carry them bare, you might want to take a hard file to any burrs you discover along the outsides. Any that miraculously escaped Knipex QC, and consider taking these front corners off with a file, as they're very sharp. Let me demonstrate. Yep, they're sharp. So let me show you some of the ways that I've carried them a little more thoughtfully. I'll focus on some of the less obvious ways to carry them that you might not have thought of. They aren't necessarily in order of my preference, but instead the level of protection that they provide from the jaws of the pliers. And I'll just start with the least protection. So here we go. The most basic idea of carrying them without any covering, but with a basic precaution, is just to keep the jaws shut. So the worst of the scratching surfaces obviously are the teeth, these interior surfaces of the jaws. And if they're pressed together, they're much less of a threat to anything else in the pocket. And then you just have to worry about these outside corners. At least the teeth are controlled and their pinch eliminated from anything that might be in the pocket. And this can be accomplished in one of several different ways. One of them could be the obvious EDC standard, a zip tie. You can put those around the neck, tighten it real tight. It's a single-use solution. It's not that effective because there's still a little bit of play in the jaws. No matter what you do, there's always a little play in the jaws. And it's kind of wasteful to replace every single time for just a single use when you're out and around. Wrapping silicone bands or elastic bands around the neck or handles is another option. If you just confine the neck, and now because they're elastic, they're not gonna open. So this not only keeps them closed, but it gives me the added benefit of having an additional useful tool on me. I find silicone bands handy on a regular enough basis that I like to keep one with me all the time. And this is an easy sort of two birds with one stone way to do that. In fact, on a day trip last weekend, my wife and I needed something to keep an ill-fitting food container closed. And sure, some cord and a knot can work, and tape can work, but elasticity is more useful in some cases. As a small upgrade, I like to put more than one band on there for additional utility. And I can use one for the impromptu use, and I can keep the other one on there to keep the jaws closed. So, and selecting different lengths or thicknesses of bands like I have here gives me two different options for whatever comes up. If I need a little more heavy-duty, smaller one, or a thinner, longer one. Another option is a hook and loop closure here. Just get a piece of hook and loop and go around. And that keeps them closed. It's not as sure as the elastic. You really gotta finesse it. Okay, there we go. And that also works. It's just, then it's one more thing to keep track of, that's all. While I'm using the tool now, I've gotta keep track of this thing and put it in a pocket or something and hope it doesn't come sliding out when I pull my hand out or whatever. And whereas when I'm using an elastic and I take it off, I just pop it onto my wrist while I'm using the tool, and then it serves as both, you know, a reminder to put it on and a place to hold it while I'm doing it. And I can just pop it back on when I'm done. So I prefer silicone bands to a little bit of hook and loop. A basic but replaceable solution could be these little gear ties from Night Eyes, and you could just wrap that around and keep the jaws closed. It's, you know, much like a zip tie, it's not the most secure, but it generally works. It's not bad, and at least it's not a single use like a zip tie. Now we move on to the options that address the jaws directly. The most minimal and inexpensive of which is to close the jaws with tape, and that also provides some padding. And this isn't a job for gaffer or duct tape or even electrical tape, as those will you know, they're bound to leave a sticky residue on the pliers, especially if they're wrapped for a while without use, and particularly if heat was involved. So the kind of tape that I prefer for this situation is this self-fusing tape. This is Nashua Stretch and Seal. Self-bonding silicone tape. Anyway, there's a backing. Neither side's really sticky, but once it stretches, it bonds to itself. So here's an attempt to, you know, this isn't as, the silicone version isn't as good when the thing you're wrapping is an irregular shape, like these plier jaws. I mean, it's great on symmetrical things like pipe or something like that, but this is a stretch. See what I did there? I'll give it a shot so you can see, and then I'll show you something that I think does a little bit better for this application. Stretch. It's going to want to slide off the jaws, so you have to kind of support it quite a bit as you stretch it. Okay, and then you just press it together at the end, and the stretching provides the activation of the self-adhesion or the self-fusing. And if you come off the tip of the pliers like this a little bit, the tip is protected, the corners are protected, the pliers are closed, and you can just pop that in your pocket. So that's not bad. See how that whole chunk is now fused together? Okay, so now another solution along those lines, though, is the rubber version. There's a rubber variety of self-fusing tape, like this Scotch 2242, that works pretty well. I think even a little bit better. It's got a little bit of adhesive on this side, but it isn't a sticky adhesive that sticks to the that stays on the pliers. It's different from, say, a normal electrical tape. Okay, this one does even better at staying in place while you wrap it. And there you go. So now I've got the tip covered, the sharp corners covered, pliers are closed and sealed, and ready for the pocket. So that's actually kind of a really simple pocket carry version, and this rubber version grabs a little bit better on these irregular shapes. The rubber version doesn't feature the the high and low temperatures of silicone. These guys can withstand very high and very low temperatures, and so this has a narrower band of temperatures it can withstand. But really, when you're talking about pocket carry, it's never going to have to endure anything that you need to worry about. So not bad, but also single use, like a zip tie. So it's more just about protection and more useful, but single use. Okay, actually this one won't slide off. I need to peel it off. Single use. Now, more contained and somewhat protective is to keep them in a sleeve or pouch of some kind. The most basic of which is just a zip top bag. It works better than you might think, and when one wears out, they're just easy to replace. I stock several different kinds of these zip top bags for various needs, and I use these stronger 4 mil thickness for most uses. And you can either just toss them in a small one like this, and neck deep, and then just drop it in your pocket, or you can customize it a bit to retain them a little bit better. And let me show you how to do that. So I just take the pliers, put them on there. I don't know if this contrasts enough, but I'll show you. And then I'm just going to draw it straight down from the corner. Just kind of leave it a little bit of room, like that. So I've got that. And then I just cut it out. So now I've got that. And then just take a lighter and weld it back together. And really you don't have to, it doesn't have to be complicated. I used to, hold these with pliers but it's kind of overkill because it kind of wants to go back together. So I just give it a little bit of a touch of heat and then pinch it together a little bit at a time. And what we end up with is kind of a custom solution to a very basic pouch. And then that you can drop into, and this stays better because it's now, it's got this curve to it, and so it retains them a little bit better, and it's a little bit, it's a little bit nicer. And when it wears out, you just make a new one. In fact, it's so easy, you just drop this on a new one. We just drop it on a new one and trace it out, and you're set to go. Another option is to fully contain them in a bigger one like this. If you had, you could just throw it in there again, throw it in your pocket if you wanted, but a little extra effort can go a long way. We don't want them all the way to the bottom, then I'll have too much room up top, so let's just bring them up a little bit higher. About like that. And then let's come down. Give it a little bit of room. Come down. And why not curve around like that? There. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so now I've got this, and I just weld it like I did before. And then up here at the zipper, you got to give it a little bit more, because that needs to be a little stronger right there. Finish the weld. Okay, so then let's have a look. Maybe we made it too narrow, but not a bad operation to repeat. And it worked out. So now you can take more time and make this look better. You just saw me burn through it pretty quick, no pun intended. And then anyway, so you can slip those in the pocket. In fact, I often tend to not need the that much top on these, so I'll just slide that off. Anyway, that's an option. And zip top bags like these, they protect a little, but maybe not good enough to fully trust cohabitation with a phone or something that might get scratched or that you care about a lot. You know, that anything could get damaged by rattling around against hardened steel with just 4 mils of plastic between them. So fair warning, but this is an option. Okay, what about a Tyvek credit card sleeve? These are even more durable than zip top bags. They're not a bad option, but they could, you know, just like the smaller ones, they could slip out if you don't find a way to keep it closed. And maybe this is an opportunity to keep yet another tool on you, like a binder clip or a paper clip, and then you're not worried about that, and you have another tool to work with. But really, these RFID blocking ones that are foil lined, they kind of would stay. May stay put without too much persuasion. And then there's the added benefit of knowing your pliers won't get hacked. So there's that. Next, a thin cloth sleeve like this sunglasses sleeve right here, or any small pouch that we collect from time to time can work. And they're not a lot of protection, but unless the cloth is thicker, you might have a pouch that's thicker. I just, you know, it's a little bit big, but I just fold it down and tie it on the opposite side. And it works pretty well. Oops. It's not bad, it's just not very padded, so, but it's an option. Next, though, we get a little bit more involved, but a little bit better, is a custom pouch of some kind, and here's one I made in leather. This is thin upholstery leather, and it works really well in this case because, you know, I prefer it because it's strong and protective, but not too bulky. And, you know, I have those heavy-duty leather tool holders that we've all gotten from time to time, but they're really just too much for in-pocket carry for me. And so I made this one for my favorite pocket tools. I know you'd never be able to tell that this is handmade if I didn't admit it, right? But in my defense, I did make it in about 10 minutes. So even this thin stuff is sometimes a bit bulky in the pocket, but usually not bad. Let me just show you with both tools in it. So I can pop in Ranger and pop in my Cobras, and it's just right for the pocket. But again, you know, a little bit thicker, a couple more layers of thickness, but a lot more protection for the jaws of the pliers. And I also tried this folding case. You know, back in when Anker first came out with braided, sort of heavy-duty braided USB cables, one of them came in this little magnetic, this is magnetic here, magnetic folder here. And when I was searching for ways to carry this thing, I stumbled across it in my pouch drawer, and found that it actually almost looks made for it. And it's just magnetic here, so that's actually kind of not bad. The only bad thing about it is it adds those 3 layers of thickness, which is a little bit bulky in the pocket, but not bad. So I really have this in here mainly to represent the idea of searching through what you have and seeing if you have anything that might work for how you want to carry pliers or whatever tool you're trying to carry. So that's an example. Another example is this County Com pouch. It's similar to my, my pocket toolkit. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. But my pocket toolkit, this is a County Com pouch. This is a similar one. Anyway, this can totally work. I mean, both of these tools fit in there just fine, and in fact, they fit in just barely and just perfectly to zip it up. And so that works fairly well, much like my pouch did. About the same thickness overall. And the only thing that I don't like about something zipped or something more contained, like this alpaca pouch that a lot of people love, and I think is a great pouch for what it is, but it's not really a tool pouch for me because I don't want to have to dig through. I mean, the way I use this Swiss Army knife is I have it out all the time, and I like to just pocket clip it, and I just like to be able to lift it out without getting into something. I don't mind getting a little bit more involved to get the pliers out because they're less frequently used, but I don't prefer to have things too deep in a pouch. That's also why this one is a little more involved. Just don't prefer it, but this pouch is about as complicated as I want to get, so I can just lift stuff straight out of the top. But all of these are options. They're good options. If you like to have things contained, like in little kits. I love little kits and I love containers. But with tools I use frequently, especially this one, I want it really handy. This can be a little bit less handy. I've also seen a few 3D printed cases designed specifically for the Cobras. I can't vouch for them. I haven't used them, but it's another way you could go with this. I like the idea of them being custom, but the case adds bulk and sort of a larger rigid footprint in the pocket isn't what I'm after. But that could be a good solution. Let me know if you've tried them. One of the better couple of ideas I've had is to actually focus on the jaws and make my own cover or shell for them with a couple of the different solutions I like to use. And the first one is PCL. I can't remember the chemical name, but it's a plastic, thermoplastic, and comes in tubs or bags, and essentially they're just little plastic granules that you put in water on the stove, and they soften and turn clear, and as soon as they're clear you can take them out and start to form them either with your hands or with tools. And when it fully cools, it is a hard plastic. And so it's great for prototyping or hobbyists. In fact, it was the hobbyist 3D printing before 3D printing existed. And I made this little shell for the jaws of the pliers out of that stuff. Let me show you what they do. You just pop them in, whoops, pop them in like that. And that's on. I squished a little bit of it up through this gap here in the channel so that it would stay on, and then so all I have to do is just tip that out and my pliers come right out. So that is my little solution for jaw protection carry in my pocket. Another similar handmade cover can be done with Sugru, and if you haven't played with Sugru, do yourself a favor and pick some up. It's a silicone putty that comes in little pouches, and you just form it into whatever you want it to do, and when it fully cures, it becomes a silicone, rubber, whatever you made it into. Really versatile little project tool, and especially for fixes around the house. I've made so many things, but this is the little cover I made with Sugru. It's a snake, if you can't tell, a cobra, and it's not flared obviously because it's content. But that's nice and slim in the pocket. Real simple, real easy to get on and off. It's a little less complicated than that's not bad. So that's yet another solution that you could go with. So there are a few other things that I've tried, but this selection represents the broad categories, and I hope this gives you some ideas. As always, if you have something else that works for you, please let me know. Thanks for watching.